very similar in that the beater shaft, the blades, all those kind of things are very, very similar, if not the same. It still comes in the 12 and the 24, but you'll notice that it looks a lot different. And there's a couple of good reasons for that. So I think, in my opinion, and again, I'm not a Electro Freeze employee, but in my opinion, you've kind of got all of the benefits of what you had before with a better looking machine and some other upgrades to it that will really help people modify or diversify their ice cream products. So this is the 12, and again, for those of you who've seen it before, primarily everything inside is very, very similar, if not the same. The dasher, the blades, the gasket on the back. We'll run a batch here to show you. We're running batches throughout the show. The extraction chute and the door a little bit differently, and the spigot is now situated on the front of the unit rather than on the top. The one big difference you'll see is this module here. So here we can change the beater speed or the RPM. There are some manufacturers who call that an infinite overrun type product. I don't know whether infinite overrun is accurate. I think you can adjust overrun or the air that's in the ice cream. But overrun really comes down to a mixture of butter fat or fat content in the mix, your beater speed, and the refrigeration, or how cold the barrel is. So the beauty is now that previously you would just have one form of extraction, one RPM. You can manipulate that a little bit. If you keep the beater turning before you extract, you may have been able to get maybe a 5 to 7% change in overrun previously. Here, the beater can go anywhere between 230 RPMs, which was what the standard was in the old machine, down to 0. You wouldn't take it down to 0, you'd lock the machine up more than likely. But the beauty is now that you can do a lower overrun ice cream or a lower air ice cream. And when you've got a product that's got lower air or less air, it's perceived by the customer to be a higher quality product. So the beauty is that if your potential customer has ice cream that they're making in their store, they may want to make that at a lower overrun, maybe a 40, 35, 40, 45. But if they have some bulk customers or wholesale customers, they can actually make a different kind of product, a higher overrun product, to give them more profitability. So it really is a game changer so far as batch is concerned. There's also a viscosity adjustment here, which basically is a torque setting. So you can up or down that to be able to give you a much thicker or a lighter viscosity. So really these two controls work in conjunction with one another. Once you've reached the viscosity level, excuse me, then the refrigeration will shut off. So again, it's really manipulating the overrun and the viscosity of the machine, or of the product that comes out of the machine. And you'll find that that has more of an effect on a higher overrun product. You're not going to see a lot of that on your water ices and your sherbets. And as you get into your 8, 10, 12, 14, 16% overrun products, this is where this will change quite dramatically. Questions, comments, concerns thus far? You all look wonderful, by the way, first day of the show. Similarly, on this side, you've got your standard dasher switch and refrigeration switch. That hasn't changed. So you can rotate the dasher with this left-hand switch for cleaning and for sanitizing. When you start to freeze the unit down, that's when you want to hit your refrigeration switch. This should say refrigeration. So we've sanitized the unit previously. We'll make a batch now. You can kind of see the process. We'll be making batches throughout the show, offering taste and so forth here. One thing I will tell you when you're talking to customers about a batch freezer is that the industry describes batch freezers by their volume, or the barrel volume. So you'll have customers that will come to you, and the standard barrel sizes are, most companies, or a lot of companies, will have a 5 or 6 quart barrel. You'll have the 10 to 12 quart barrel. You'll have a 20 to 24 quart barrel. Now that doesn't mean they can make that amount of product, because you've got to leave room for overrun. So even though this is a 12 quart barrel, customers sometimes will think, well, I can make 12 quarts of ice cream out of this in one batch, and you really can't. Each batch freezer has a minimum and maximum liquid batch size. So you've got to be aware of that. I would say, and again, this is brand new, we're still kind of, I would say that this is anywhere between a 4 and an 8 quart batch, liquid batch, depending on the size or the amount of fat. Because the higher amount of fat, the more air you're going to need to expand. You good? Righto. So we've sanitized the unit already. A couple of things that we touch on in class is that when you're putting these units together, the dasher or the beater shaft has plastic blades on it. You want to make sure that when you're assembling it, and we'll do some assembly throughout the show as well, to make sure that there's no metal on metal contact. This surface here, this barrel surface, is the most important surface on this machine, regardless of whether it's a batch freezer or a custom machine or a soft serve machine. So we teach in our class our customers to be able to put that together with no metal on metal contact. You don't want that heavy dasher resting on the surface of the barrel. So when you're feeding that dasher in, make sure the rear gasket's on, make sure that the blade or the dasher blade is resting on the metal rather than the dasher itself. Once it's engaged, before you put anything, second rule is make sure the front door's closed. Sounds very rudimentary, but when you've spilled 8 gallons of mix on the floor, it's very hard to mix it up. The door's a little bit different here too. It actually locks into place in this latch here, whereas before it just slid down. So the nice thing is you can kind of put some downward pressure on it and know that it's closed. So with that being the case, we'll put this mix in. So I've got 4 quarts of a 14%. What's going on there, mate, with the plant? You're, it looks like it's coming over the top of you. Day of the Triffids. So I've got 4 quarts of premium ice cream base here. It's a 14%. Most of your customers' liquid mix will come in a 2.5 gallon bag. Some suppliers will offer it in a 1 gallon frozen container, but this is very typical, this bag here. And most customers are going to get 2 bags per box, so 5 gallons of mix in a box. They don't need to use the whole bag at one time. It's got a resealable cap, so I just pulled out here about 4 quarts, run it through this batch, put this back in the cooler, and we'll use it throughout the day. The batch itself, or the mix itself, is pretty well unflavored. So it's more like a sweet cream or a sweetened condensed milk flavor to it. So you will have to add some flavor. So we'll just put some cake batter in. In this particular one, we'll be doing different flavors as we go throughout the show. So you want about 1 ounce of your flavor per gallon. And the beauty of this horizontal dasher is that you can put the flavor in the mix and actually have the dasher mix that flavor into it. Some of the verticals don't have that. You've actually got to mix it before it goes in. So I always leak test it before I pour the whole lot in, so it's good just to pour a little bit in. Make sure that you don't have any liquid coming out, which is good.
Got a learning experience on the other day. Cleaning that machine, putting it together wrong.
Another function of this is an adjustable shelf. So this particular shelf's got some silicone on it just to seal it up, but when the units come out, they have an adjustable shelf. So you'll want the unit up nice and high for gelato if you're doing a more low profile pan. If you're doing a 3 gallon bucket or even some larger containers, you can modify the shelf, which is actually really, really convenient. So right now, my RPM is set on 0. I'm going to turn the dasher on, and then we'll turn it up to 228 or 230 was the standard previously, so we'll start on that. And right now, our viscosity, in order to change the viscosity, you'll pull this knob out and adjust it and put it back in. So we'll put the viscosity, the range is anywhere between 0 and 100 or 99. We kind of suggest we set it on about 20. As the customer starts getting used to what the machine's doing with their different types of mixes, this will be part of their recipe process. So as they start formulating their recipes, what flavors, what extraction temperatures, this will be part of that recipe. We'll turn the refrigeration on, compressor kicks on. Now generally the first batch of the day will take anywhere between 8 to 12 minutes depending on the flavor profile. Depending what you put into the mix, it can change the freeze point of that mix. So a standard vanilla or a cake batter mix like this should be standard 8 to 12 minutes. If you start putting chocolate powder in, cocoa will depress the freezing point. Anything heavy like either lemon or cheesecake base will change the freezing point. So there is some variance with that, and that's why when we're teaching people to use the batch freezer, we often say that this is the process where they need to have the little black book out. So their batch for vanilla may be 4 quarts of vanilla, 1 ounce of vanilla extract, maybe some vanilla bean seeds. They'll set the RPM on, let's say, 200, and their viscosity on 25. And that will be part of that process. Now, if they're doing just that one product in their store, they don't need to change this all the time. They can set this at that point and just keep product going through the whole time. The beauty of this is that if they've got a variety of different products, if they want a low overrun product or a high overrun product, they can actually factor that into their production process. This is like, that looks like me when I'm lying on one of those exercise beds. Another thing too, when we're actually utilizing the batch in the process of teaching people the batching process, we try and get people to do multiple batches right after the last one. So for example, today might be my berry day. So the idea is that when I extract this product out, rather than clean it out and put fresh product in, my goal is to be able to utilize the coldness of the barrel just to freeze straight on the back of the last batch. So I might do a couple of batches of vanilla, I might do some cookies and cream, I might do some cookie dough, they're all vanilla based. Then I might put my strawberry in, right on the back of the last batch. I extract out the strawberry, then I do a raspberry, straight on the back of that I'll do a mixed berry. So it reduces batch time, because each and every batch after this should take anywhere between 5 and 8 minutes, depending on what's the product is. You've got to be aware of cross-contamination, you've got to be aware of color contamination. And oftentimes, and that's where kind of we come in, as we teach people how to utilize that time effectively. A lot of times if you're not looking at your production schedule, you're not putting forward the production schedule, you'll find that the 3 flavors you've got to do are pistachio, mixed berry sorbet, and chocolate. And you can't run either of them on the back of the other, because pistachio is a nut product, you can't put another product on top of a nut. Chocolate's too dark, mixed berry's got seeds in it, which will go into the next. So the idea is to be able to kind of be a partner to your customer to kind of help them go through the process of what they can do with it and how they more effectively can freeze down. So at 230, we're still quite liquid, and again, you'll kind of see the frosting on the front door here, which will give you an indication that it's getting close. We have a viscosity setting on 20, it's right at 11, so again, it's going to give you an idea of how long that batch is going to take before I can kind of put the next batch in. So the idea is that the next batch should be being processed. The liquid mix is getting ready, flavors putting in. So they're basically a production machine. This really is a production machine. A lot of times when we're talking about how to effectively utilize this machine, a lot of stores, particularly soft serve and batch stores, look at this machine and they run it between, say, 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night. And what we try and educate people down at Scoop School is saying that really they should be next level in looking at opportunities to make custom products for frozen desserts for wineries, for breweries, for other ice cream stores, and get to the point where they can pay someone to come in at midnight and run this batch freeze from midnight all the way through till 6 o'clock in the morning. We try and tell people that, you know, you pay your rent 24 hours a day, and this unit will run 24 hours a day. So the idea is that to really educate people that this is a high production machine. They can make product for their own store, but they can also look for wholesale accounts and other catering opportunities with a batch freezer like this. You can feel free to have a look in. For those of you who haven't seen the batch freezer working, so as the product starts to freeze down and expand, you'll start to get some of that product kind of back out of the front plate here. And that's a relatively good way of kind of determining how far the batch is going. Another thing we'll do, and operators do this even without thinking about it, even those that have been in 20 or 30 years, they'll do a spatula test. So when they think the product is ready, they'll take a spatula and just extract a little of the product on the spatula just to make sure that it's firm enough to extract out. Even those that have kind of been making ice cream out of the same batch for a number of years, still just out of habit, just make sure that that's firm enough to extract out. I see a lot of variety in extraction temperatures and extraction consistency. Some stores like to pull their product out really soft. The downside of that is when that product hits the bucket, they're losing a lot of air. So the overrun basically drops down, particularly they don't put it in a blast freezer, they just put it in a display case. They'll lose a lot of air out of that, or a lot of structure. So to each their own. A lot of times what we'll do is kind of tell people that, you know, once it sits up nicely on the spatula, that's a relatively good consistency to extract out into the bucket. You should be able to extract the entire process into the bucket and not have it kind of collapsing at the end. Just another tip too, you should always be extracting product into a cold bucket. So whenever you're in the production process, you'll either have buckets in the blast freezer here or waiting in the display case, so that if you're pulling product, this will extract out here at about 18 to 20 degrees. If you're extracting product out into a 72 degree bucket or a room temperature product, you get heat shock down there. And it's not going to make a huge difference in the long run, but when you get down to the bottom of that bucket, you will see a difference in consistency. So right now, I'll pull a little bit out on the spatula and see how we're looking. So if it doesn't drop off, that's relatively good. That's set on a 20 consistency or viscosity. And again, I'll be kind of working with it throughout the show to kind of get the ultimate. We'll pull it out now just so that we can see how that works. So my refrigeration switch is still on. I can turn the compressor off now, and I leave the dasher turning so when I extract out, and my idea is to just fashion that into the sides of the bucket first. I know there's no sides on a round bucket, but there is a rim there. You don't want to have any air pockets in there. Now, if we were variegating or putting a ribbon in through this, we would actually stop it at about an inch mark and then put our ribbon or our particulates in, and then we would start it up again. Some batch freezer people like to actually stop the dasher when they do that and then start it up again. Some like to just shut the front door. Shut the front door. Get spoons, mini spoons here, I'm sure we do. So when you're putting particulates in, or cake pieces, cookie pieces, a lot of that is done post-extraction or when we're pulling it out. You can put some particulates into the unit, but you've got to be aware that this safety grill on the front here is going to stop pulp, cookies. And another thing too is that the dasher is moving so quickly here that it will actually pulverize anything. So if you really want good chunks of Oreos in your cookies and cream, it really should be put in post-extraction or as you're pulling it out. Okay. Dasher's off. So at this point what we would do is put a lid on that and put it in the blast freezer. I'm a big supporter of blast freezing. We're getting spooned, so don't shoot the messenger yet. Blast freezing primarily brings this product down to a storage temperature, so you rotate it out of the blast freezer and into the display case or into your storage freezer. The big thing about blast freezing is it's not the temperature of what the blast freezer is set at. The blast freezer, primarily it's not the temperature it's set at, it's how fast that product gets down to temperature. So we'll have people often say, well, I don't need a blast freezer because my storage freezer is set at -30. The downside is that this blast freezer is also set at -30. but it's got a fan in there that's circulating that product. So you're getting down to the -30 core temperature for this container in about 4 to 6 hours. Whereas in a regular walk-in set at -30, you might be 18 to 20 hours. So what happens is that in a blast freezer, I'm trapping that ice crystal in that air pocket so that it's still going to be as crisp and fresh as it is, sorry I spat a little bit, when it's in the case. Anything that's blast frozen will have longevity in the case more than just a static freezer. So I typically say, do you need a blast freezer? No, you don't need one. Should you have one? Yes, you probably should. And this is a great option. We have one of these units at our training facility. It's very, very good. Spoons, bucket, please avail yourself. Questions, comments, concerns? No questions? Comments?
Sounds great.
You don't have pink pocketbooks in here.
Oh, you got a question, mate?
You don't have pink pocketbooks.
You can tell just by the look at it that it looks a little bit different from the old one. It's a little bit more stylized. I really think, particularly in a batch market right now, it really is a batch market, that this unit should be the kind of lead so far as introduction-wise. This is what's new, it's new technology, it's a new unit. This is a bit of a game changer, I think.